Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to VirtuAlly, where I share with you what I discovered this week in the world of virtual reality. First piece of news, for this year's ComicCon, Conan O'Brien brought back Conan360, which he launched with AT&T in April of last year as a way to bring more immersion to his audience. It features a 360-degree camera view of his show, which can be viewed on the Team Coco smartphone app. And as part of the promotion for his ComicCon appearance, Conan360 is now enabled for virtual reality. Viewers can watch clips of his shows at Comic-Con using a Google Cardboard. Plus, Team Coco held a limited giveaway of their very own Conan360 cardboard headsets. Oh, they're cute. So here's why this story is particularly interesting to me. There's a camp of people out there who say that 360-degree mono video is not real VR. For it to be real, it has to be stereoscopic 3D, otherwise it loses depth data. And I have to disagree with that because even though 360-degree video isn't the most idealistic form of VR, it's super unrealistic to set standards that high for everyone to be able to produce content in a reasonable amount of time, especially on platforms like YouTube, which have 360 enabled, where content and rapid production is king. I mean, there are giant companies with millions of dollars in funding who are still trying to figure this out. Right now, the easiest and quickest way to do VR and get people excited about it is through mono 360-degree video. And this is especially great because Conan has a huge following, and he's basically advertising VR to them right now, plus giving away free VR devices. Stuff like this is going to help ramp up VR faster than if we waited around for the perfect VR experiences, which isn't going to be anytime soon. In our next piece of news, it was recently discovered that the Virtual Reality Functional Capacity Assessment Tool, or VRFCAT, which has been used in recent years to show function in schizophrenia, may also be useful in detecting early Alzheimer's disease. The VRFCAT uses interactive gaming to recreate day-to-day activities and measure a person's functionality as they perform them. Now, the reason that's significant is that currently, assessing how well a patient is responding to treatment or how well they can function in daily life relies a lot on the very imprecise reports of the people that live with and care for them. And it can be really easy to miss all the little subtle changes in a person's capacity to function as Alzheimer's and other cognitive impairment advances. And that kind of measure becomes even less reliable in cases where, for instance, the patient and their spouse are both elderly, and the spouse may be experiencing cognitive issues of their own. In clinical trials, that kind of assessment just isn't reliable enough. The program measures reasoning and problem solving, speed of processing, and working memory. And it simulates everyday activities like shopping and using public transportation. So the VRFCAT can be a much more precise, objective way of measuring a patient's progress or decline during clinical trials. And that's amazing, and it's just one more way that VR is making the world a better place. So in our final piece of news, we're going to talk a little bit about porn. It's a little different for this show, and it's a little controversial, but it's news, and we're going to cover it because this is a news show. The major adult entertainment company Naughty America has just released its very first virtual reality porn video entitled Two Chicks, Same Time, making it the very first big US company to release VR porn. There are two versions of the video, one from a male perspective and one from a female perspective, and both feature two very popular porn stars, Nikki Benz and Jacqueline Taylor. Content is formatted for 180-degree stereoscopic head tracking, so you do need a VR device to experience it. And in particular, Naughty America recommends the Samsung Gear VR. At this year's Comic-Con, both Benz and Taylor hosted a promotion where Comic-Con goers could come and try on a VR headset, watch the content, and then discuss it with Benz and Taylor themselves. Now, what's interesting is that according to Naughty America, they will be releasing new VR porn content on their site every week. Now, this is a bit of a controversial topic, but I think this could be a really cool thing. For VR, yes, but primarily for porn. Now, I did watch both of the Naughty America VR preview clips that are available for free online for research. And as with most porn I've seen, for research, the acting and the story development was frankly god-awful. Plus, in most non-amateur porn that features any kind of heterosexual sex, the woman functions mainly as, let's face it, a walking, talking set of orifices without much in the way of personality or motivation. Unless you count her motivation to become a Hollywood star who'll do anything to achieve her dream. And I'm not saying that men in porn are that much better off in terms of character development. I'm here to fix your printer, ma'am. Would you care to see my inkjet? But my point is that pornography is a highly male-driven industry, and when men make up that much of your audience, you run the risk of creating really, really unrealistic expectations of what should or will happen when you have sex with women. So porn is designed to be sexual entertainment in its most concentrated form, like crack rock or meth. It's just boiled down to its most potent form. And because that's what viewers are mostly looking for, I feel like porn's gotten a little lazy. And VR has the potential to maybe class it up a little bit by adding a new element that you can't get from 2D porn on a screen. With VR, you could get so immersed in a virtual sexual experience that the stuff that you would normally fast forward through in a porno can actually become part of the experience that can be appreciated, like for instance, going on a virtual date. In real life, when you're going to sleep with someone, you generally don't just go straight for the money shot. You talk to the person and get to know them at least a little bit before you do it. And that build-up, that anticipation, that's part of the experience that in real life you wouldn't want to miss. Plus, you get to be whoever you want. Or if you prefer, it can just be a really standard dating situation, but maybe with a person that you feel like in your real life isn't super attainable for you for whatever reason. Plus, in our society, there's no real training for getting out there and getting into the dating scene. And so if you're someone who struggles with that or needs a little help in the confidence department, something like this might actually be able to help you practice and increase that confidence so you can get out there and do it for real. Now, of course, a lot of companies are trying to do the VR porn thing, but Naughty America is the first big company to enter the space in a real way. And I think if it's done right, VR could actually heighten porn into full story experiences, which would improve porn, make it better and more enjoyable. Plus, it could have the potential to elevate women in porn from sexual objects into human beings who are worth getting to know before you them. I don't know. So for this week's interview, I got to have a great video chat with Kent Bai, the creator and host of the Voices of VR podcast. And I'll tell you up front, normally I always like to ask my guests what is their dream VR experience, but unfortunately, Kent and I ran out of time and couldn't get to that one, so the next time he's on the show, we'll have to ask him. Check it out. Okay, so we're here with Kent Bai, the creator and host of the Voices of VR podcast. Hi there, Kent.
Hey, Allie, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for coming on the show. So, real quick, I am a loyal listener of the Voices podcast, but for anyone who hasn't gotten to experience it yet, can you tell us what it is?
So, the Voices of VR podcast is basically my way of learning the best practices of virtual reality. I've been going to, at this point now, 6 different conferences over the last year, and I try to track down some of the top VR developers, academics, and VR manufacturers to try to really ask them direct from source what kind of insights they have into the medium of virtual reality.
So, with podcasts, they're interesting because, much like a radio program, they're auditory. They're an auditory form of entertainment or news or information. Given that you have such a passion, an obvious passion for VR, where do you think podcasting's place is in such a visual medium as VR?
I started using phase shift technologies in order to kind of animate the faces in VR. And I think that what I'm waiting for actually is the ability to take my podcast and kind of shoot it into a program that automatically animates the mouth as it's moving.
Cool.
But I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the full thing because someone's body language, the way they're looking, their facial expressions, I really think that it's not there yet in terms of being able to replicate that. So I actually prefer to do most of my interviews face-to-face at this point, just because the amount of presence and attention that I can give with someone face-to-face is, we're not even near that right now with VR. That was one of the stories that I broke recently was because I went to the IEEE VR academic conference, I sort of got connected to some people who were in that research community, and I caught wind of Hal Lee and some of the work that he was doing. And also with Oculus Research, they were creating this HMD with this arm that would hold a depth sensor camera that would be able to record the bottom of the face, and then they would have strain sensors within the HMD to be able to do full facial capture within virtual reality. So it's kind of starting the foundations for social VR. So much of it, I think, is going to be in the face. And once that's in place, then I think we're going to see a lot more telepresence and interactions within VR. But right now, I'm sort of sticking to doing things face-to-face.
Cool. Since you mentioned IEEE VR, I wanted to ask you about that. For those who don't know, that's the leading academic VR conference in the world at this time. So you got to attend that, and you were there in a journalistic capacity, and you're maybe one of the only journalists there. How would you say that experience compared to all of the sort of more consumer-based, dev-based conferences that you've been able to attend?
The energy at IEEE VR is nowhere near the type of excitement that you see at a consumer VR conference. They're a little bit more jaded because they've been through the sort of hype cycles of VR, but they're also much more connected to the pragmatic applications of VR in industry. And so you'll find a lot of people looking at, well, how's this going to actually solve a business problem in a specific use case? And so you'll see people from applied universities trying to do the latest research and see how it can be applied to their corporate environments. And overall, it was just like a big giant download of the latest and greatest virtual reality research.
You make a point to attend every VR related event that you can. Have you noticed any kind of overarching theme within the VR community at large regarding just what everyone's doing there? What's drawing everybody to this community? What is it speaking to in these people to make them want to learn and create and play in VR space so much?
I think that anybody that tries out virtual reality kind of has this moment of like, oh my God, this is going to change everything.
Yes.
And I think that for me, the question that I like to ask at the end of every interview is, what do you see as the ultimate potential of virtual reality? And it's a kind of interesting litmus test because either they've really thought about it and they just rattle off all these really high-level visionary perspectives, or it kind of takes them and shocks them and they're like, oh my God, it's too big to even imagine or speak about. Because there's experiences that we have in life that you get to the point of trying to describe them or write about them or make a movie or any other medium, and you just get to the point where it's like, you know what, you just kind of had to be there.
Yeah.
And I think with virtual reality, what we're starting to see is to be able to replicate that process of actually being there and what that felt like. And so it's going to be generating all sorts of empathy and compassion. The amount of training opportunities we have in terms of having our brains feel like we're actually in a real space, and what that means in terms of replicating training, but also expanding our own human capacities and potentials of what our mind is even capable of doing. It's like this lawnmower man potential of just like releasing the untapped potential of our capacity of our human minds.
So, Kent, you just launched a Patreon for your Voices of VR podcast, and one of the biggest goals of your Patreon campaign is to be able to do a daily Voices podcast every weekday. Now, there aren't a ton of daily podcasts out there. That's definitely ambitious, and it sounds awesome. What will that look like for you? How's that going to differ from what you're currently doing?
Well, currently I have a day job where I will get up at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. and sort of edit and write up all the podcasts. I'll go to work, I'll come home, work on VR experiences on myself, and I just basically my life is extremely full. Like, I run to the edge. Last year I did 70 straight days, 7 days a week of putting out a podcast just to see if I could do it. I did it, and I got to the end and I was just like, wow, I just totally burnt out and needed a break. And so I can go to a conference and do anywhere from 50 to 80 interviews, at the highest that I've ever done in my experience of doing interviews. So I'll go to a conference and I'll have enough of a backlog to very quickly, come up with a month's worth of content in just a few days. And so I've already have 4 months worth of content where I could do a daily podcast, and there's going to be more events and more stuff. And so I just want to be able to react to people emailing me. I want to be able to go and travel to more different events, go to different regions and kind of cover what's happening. And also just have more time and spaciousness to actually try out different VR experiences, which at this point I don't have a lot of extra time to spend in VR because I'm spending so much of my time producing media and content about VR. So the more that I'm able to experience VR and create VR experiences, I think the more well-informed I'll be as sort of a journalist covering this space.
Well, Kent, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and tell us a little bit about Voices. And if people want to find your Patreon, where can they find it?
It's at patreon.com/voicesofvr. And if you'd like to learn more about the podcast, just go to voicesofvr.com.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks so much, Kent.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Many thanks again to Kent for coming on the show. So for this week's cool VR demo, check out GamesWithWolfsuka playing the multiplayer Steamcrew VR on the Gear.
Get it in the...
it missed us.
Get it in the sights. Tell me when.
Okay, hit it. Hit it. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Go, can you go up? Go up. Good. We just dodged that torpedo. We dodged the torpedo.
That thing was cruising.
So last time, I asked you guys if you think there's a market for virtual entertainment centers. Irradiated Donkey Kong said there's room for laser tag, so I think virtual entertainment centers have a place simply because of that. They basically could be laser tag times 1,000. If the Void is everything they say it is, or will be, then I think that's enough to get me to visit it. No matter what the details of the experience are, I think the tech in general would be impressive to see. For the most part, I agree, but I will say that I think that virtual entertainment centers versus just going to play laser tag will be a much bigger investment of time and money, at least for now, for everybody involved. Pure VR said, I don't believe there is a market for virtual entertainment centers, yet. A huge mass of average consumers have not been introduced or convinced to VR. However, once VR becomes as mainstream as smartphones, the market will open up. I would visit for a top-of-the-line haptic rig or motion simulator, gadgets that are too expensive or cumbersome to keep in the home. I actually think that's pretty fair just because we, as VR enthusiasts, don't make up a huge percentage of the population. I still have conversations every day almost with people who don't even know what I'm talking about when I start talking about the Rift or the Samsung Gear VR. We still have a ways to go. And Distroid said, VECs are nice. It would be a great stress relief experience to enter medieval combat and mow down everything with a big-ass Zweihander. I thought about investing into this, but I won't as long as I don't have a good solution for haptic feedback. You want to feel your swing connect, you know? Yeah, whatever calms you down. So my question for you today goes back to our story about VR porn. Do you think that the empathy factor of VR will impact how people experience porn and even create a healthier level of respect for their sexual partners? Let me know in the comments down below or tweet me your answers at PixelWhipped. Well guys, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of VirtuAlly. My name is Allie, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Why, look who's here, my good friend Nathan.
Woo!
Oh, how cool is this
recorded.
already?
Oh,
That's right.
Man.
The second you walk in.
Ready.
That's right.
I got
Pancakes
food.
and virtual reality today.
Ooh, I got actually some quiche.